This is a quick look at the process for updating your side panels to accept the new LED kit. This process is the same whether you have an MDF in a black or a white configuration like shown here in white, or for the acrylic. Just to give you a sense of what we're going to be doing, we are going to be installing the panels. When we're finished, it's going to look like this, where you'll notice this new notch pattern that's cut out of the back side. We do not see it here because this kit hasn't been updated. This is the standard panels that does not take the LED kit. This is what it will look like when we're done in an LED configuration, with the intent that the LED strip will be able to bolt on right here and illuminate the edge lit pattern. The process is rather simple. Your kit will include all the hardware that you need for the electronics and LED, as well as an updated set of panels so that you can install this. Here's a look at what we are getting. You're going to need just a Phillips head for this step to basically remove the inner and the outer side panels and replace them with your new set. Again, this process is the same, and if you're using the MDF, you have a reversible configuration, so you could either do the black side or the white side out, depending on what style you're going for. For this install, we're just going to do the white side. The process is exactly the same for both sides, so we'll just do one and you'll repeat it on the other side. The most important note for you to have, if you listen to nothing else on here, is that there is a side that the engrave on the acrylic panel that's going to go on the inside of the box, not the outside. So inside covered with your panel in the case of an MDF. In the case of the acrylic, it's just going to have a clear acrylic panel that goes over top of it. But the engraved piece is going on the inside of the box. So if you feel the surface, you can tell where the engrave has happened. That's on this particular side. You want to look at that engrave when it's edge lit through the actual acrylic to get the sharpest effect. It will still work the other way, but it's very easy to reverse these panels because they're clear acrylic. They do appear to be reversible. You want to make sure that engrave is on the inside of the box, regardless of whether you have acrylic or an MDF configuration. Again, you're trying to look at that engrave. It gives you the sharpest effect when you're doing edge lit acrylic to look through the acrylic. It has like a lensing effect. You'll also notice there's a protective film on the outside of just one of the sides. We take it off at the shop to engrave on the other side, so that you're going to be removing the film so you can actually look through it. You can see this diamond cut pattern. It looks pretty intense, and that's to give us maximum light refraction so it illuminates best once it's inside. So you can start by prepping your acrylic inner panels. These inside panels have the notches for the rest of the panels. Okay, we're going to set this one aside because this is going on the other side. This is the side that has the engrave, therefore it's going to go on the opposite side of the box, so we'll set it over there for that side. You may notice a little bit of fogging that can happen from the laser cutting process. That's totally normal, and all you need is a little bit of wet water and a paper towel, and it'll just wipe off. Do not use IPA when cleaning off acrylic. It can craze it over time. All you need is just a little bit of water and a paper towel to remove any smudges or whatnot. So a good opportunity to just wipe it down from any handling. If you want to be really careful, you can use gloves on this process and get a nice clean smudge-free look. Alright, so that's ready to go. We're just going to set it down for a second, and again, this is going to be covered over by our new outside panel, so you can see the engrave, and this will light up nicely when it's in there, and you'll notice the notch pattern to accept the 3D printed part that has the channel that has the LED strip in it. We'll set that aside for just a moment, and we're going to start removing the side panel off of our existing one. Again, no notch. This is the old style. There's just 4 screws holding it on. Now you notice this side we do have our lid prop over here, so we're going to start by removing that, and we'll just set it aside and reuse it. Make sure you keep track of all the parts for that. take the flange nut out of the side panel just so we don't forget it. We'll set it over here. And we're just going to remove our 4 screws. Set those aside to reuse them. And we're going to pull both side panels. Now you notice when you do, the slip rod will fall down. Just go ahead and attach these to your wall, frame them, throw them away, whatever you did. You don't need them anymore. We're going to replace them with these new panels. Again, it's going acrylic on the inside and masking it with whichever color configuration you have. If you wanted to do a black, you could use the other side like that, or if you're doing it for a black configuration, or if you're doing a clear acrylic, this will be clear as well, but the process is the same for all these. We're going to just stick with the white, match it up like that. And when I'm replacing these, easiest thing I found to do is start at the top and just make sure that, I'm going to pull the front panel off just so you can see. Start with these top, make sure these 2 tabs fit into these slots. And then we're going to lay this top panel over top, and we're just going to put the top 2 screws in to just kind of hold it in place temporarily so that we can realign our slip rods in the holes where they need to go. Again, just doing the top 2 screws for this moment. And there's a number of different ways that you can go about doing this. I find that I can hold this open, and sometimes I'll even stick my head in here just to hold it up temporarily. And then I'm working around from the back to the front, making sure all the pieces fit inside their spots. One thing you want to make sure is you're seated on the far side of the box first. So make sure your slip rod is still keyed into the holes on the far side, so it's not longer than it's supposed to be. And then we're just going to work from the back to the front, making sure that tabs are fitting into slots where they're supposed to. And you'll notice that the key things kind of keeping it from sliding together are typically the 2 slip rods and this center panel. So again, just kind of lining everything up. Front exit panel. There we go. Everything goes back into its slot. And it's seated. We're just holding it in place with our fingers, and we're gonna screw the bottom 2 holes back into place. And holding the box in. Sometimes if you don't hold the back side of it and you push it, these will pop out again. So you can just get it in place and then just hold the box so it doesn't slide around on you. Make sure those are seated. Don't over tighten them. You don't need to over torque. You don't want to risk stripping anything. Those on there. All we have left to do is put our lid prop back in place. So I'm going to put the flange nut back in its spot. And again, if for some reason your washers come out, you're going to have a washer, a spacer on either side of the lid prop with a screw running through this way. The configuration might have been slightly different depending on what version of the box you had, and if you had custom side panels, sometimes the screw comes in from the other side and is capped over here. It should be pretty obvious when you're replacing it. If you're going to this kit, the flange nut goes in the spot on the side panel allowed, and just give it enough torque so you've got friction where it can stand up on its own, but not so tight that it's not going to rotate easily when you're propping it. Make sure our lid prop still works the way is intended. It does. And then we're just going to repeat the process for the other side, and we'll be ready to put our printed parts and LEDs in. To complete the wiring step, you're going to need your LED strip, your screw terminal block, the barrel plug tail, your switch, and your power supply. The tools you're going to need are a precision screwdriver and a pair of flush cutters. To begin, take one end of your LED strip and with your flush cutters, trim away a tiny piece of the plastic cover over top of the LEDs. This doesn't hurt the LEDs at all. This is simply covering the LEDs that are embedded in the strip. All we're doing is trimming away the plastic right at the end so that when you take your screw terminal, the end will slide in the flat slotted side like so. You'll notice on the screw terminal there's a side for the wires and there's a side for the LED strip. Make sure you're trimming away enough of the plastic cover so that it slides in and your two exposed ends are going to make contact with your screw terminals. Make a note of the positive and negative side of the strip. You'll need to know that in a moment when we add the wires. For now, place it down on a flat surface. Make sure that it's seated all the way and tighten the screw terminals so that the screws make contact with the pads at the end of the strip. We'll test the contacts before we install to make sure our contacts are good. If for some reason your screws are already set prior, you may need to back these screws out so that the end of the strip can slip in, and just slide it in and tighten it. Try to make sure that the terminal block is square. Sometimes it'll twist and can't if there's a solder pad at the end. You notice we have a slight twist here. You can just loosen the screws again and reseat, adjust as many times as necessary to get good contact and positioning. Next, we're going to need our barrel plug pigtail. The ends of your pigtail wires may not be well exposed, depends on how they came from the manufacturer. You can always take a pair of flush cutters and trim the ends. You're going to want to expose about 6 to 7 millimeters of wire at the end. I'll demonstrate a clean strip. You can always strip off more material if needed. This material is thin enough that you should be able to strip it rather effectively by using your flush cutters. Do not squeeze all the way and simply pull the jacket off of the end with partial pressure, or use a pair of small wire strippers if you have them. That's all you need to expose. Again, make note of which side is the positive and which side is the negative. The red is going to connect to the positive side. The black is going to connect to the negative side. It will not illuminate if you don't light it properly, and it is possible to burn out your LED strip if you do not wire it correctly, so please pay attention to this very carefully. Again, red to the positive side, black to the negative side. You'll find it easier if you insert one wire at a time. We're going to start with our positive at the top. Slide it into the terminal. Make sure that the wire is making good contact and that the ends are not fraying out of the terminal block. And tighten the screw to pinch the wire in place firmly with the terminal block. Repeat the same step. If the wire starts to fray, you can twist it so that it stays together. Seat it into the terminal block. And tighten. Verify you've got good snug contact, and again that your red positive side is matched up with the correct side of the strip and the black negative side with the negative side of the strip. Here's a close-up of a well-seated connection. When you install it, the wire will be bent behind here, so you'll want to make sure you fold back and you look to make sure that there are no frayed wires that are potentially shorting across each other, and that you're spread out evenly and not too close, again, to prevent shorts. If need be, just trim some of this insulation jacket back with your flesh cutters carefully. Go slow. Also of note, if needed, there is excess material included. You won't need this entire amount of strip. What you can do is you can fold it back on the end. I'll show that at the end, so that if you ever need to, you can just cut at any of these seams to potentially redo this. You should have about 1 or 2 extra mounts, so be careful when you're cutting this that you cut on the line so you have an adequate amount of pad for the terminal to make contact with. We're now going to check our connection. Simply plug in the switch to the end of the barrel plug. Grab your power supply. Depending on where in the world you are, your power supply may look different. This is our universal power supply for international customers. Just select the end that is correct for your part of the world. Right now we're in the US. We're going to use this US connector and slide it on, but you can very easily use the appropriate connector for wherever you're located. This is a universal switching supply. It will switch to allow for 24 volts regardless of your mains voltage. Plug it into a mains power source. And the other end, turn on the switch. It may take a moment for the LED to illuminate when the power supply is first energizing. That is totally normal. And you can verify the connection multiple times. Should be firm regardless of how you wiggle. You may notice, depending on the color of your LED, that you'll get slightly different illumination where you've exposed the LEDs. That's completely normal and necessary to allow for this terminal block to fasten properly. Once we've verified our wiring, we're going to grab our 3D printed parts that come with the kit. There is a single strip for the back of the box, and these two are for the sides. We're going to start by threading the LED strip through one of the sides, through the back strip, and through the opposing side. You'll notice on these sides there is a riv nut piece that we have that comes attached. You're going to break that off and set it aside for later for fastening it to your RepBox. For now, it should be a symmetrical piece. And again, remove both of these fastening nuts. We will use those later. You're going to start by laying on the side of the RepBox that you want the connection for your switch to go. The triangular part is the outside of the box. And think of these as the arrows pointing to the top and the bottom. You're going to lay the pigtail into the channel on the side that you want. In this case, this would be the left side of your RepBox if you were to be mimicking our install. You'll reach to get the end, and you'll notice there is a channel that this will thread through. You should just be able to very easily slide it into the channel to cover over top of the barrel plug. I'll show you a close-up in just a second. The channel only exists for this center portion between the two screw posts. That's normal. You're going to pull it all the way through slowly. until you've folded the screw terminal block on top of the wire like so. Again, making sure that your ends are not frayed or popping loose when they're folded like that. And you'll see you've got the barrel plug underneath the LED strip like so. I'm going to lay that down. We're going to continue on by taking our back panel, orienting it like so with the channel biased toward the top. I'm just going to slot the LED strip in through the end. You'll notice it may be a little bit snug if there's a solder pad or a solder joint sometimes along the strip where there's a seam. That's completely normal. Just go slowly. If for some reason it feels a little bit too tight, it's possible that a little piece of filament or something may have gotten stuck in there from the process of production. Just back it out and use flush cutter or a screwdriver to just make sure the channel is clear. Sometimes it helps to just push it down and use the silicone piece on top as just a friction piece, and you notice how easily I was able to slide that through. Once you're through the other end, it's easier to just grab the end. You can use a pair of needle nose if you needed to get in here, but I don't want to risk damaging the LED strip. You're going to pull it through and leave just a little bit of excess, and then we're going to go up the other side. You'll notice we've got a few millimeters of excess from the end. You can adjust this as you go. And for now, we're going to continue on the other side. And again, this is the opposing side. You'll notice that this flat side is going to be the outside of the box. So this would be like the box is laying on its back. With the outside this way, you want to again run the strip through the printed channel. And it should thread through rather easily. Again, checking to make sure that there's no obstructions potentially left from the printing process. Before we attach this to our rep box, we're going to do one last check to make sure that everything lights up properly, and it does. Again, makes it a lot easier to troubleshoot when it's not bolted onto the box, so you don't have to take it all off again. Everything looks good, and so we're ready to attach to our box. Alright, once we've got our LED compatible side panels on, that's the new side panel profile that's got the notch for the screw terminal in it and the cutout and the holes for the LED mount. We're gonna put it on. Again, when we set did our setup, we set it up so that the plug and the switch are going to be on the left side of this particular box, but it is reversible. If you wanted to have the switch on the other side as well, you would do the same thing just for the other side. So what we're going to do is we're going to rotate to show the side of the box, line up everything. Ultimately, the plug is going to end up on the inside of the box, hanging down out of the bottom. All you're doing is lining up these holes here and lining up, most importantly, the terminal block in that notch, so you can kind of hold it in place, guide it with your hands. And it's easier to see from the back side. But obviously before we can do that, we need to remove this top screw. That's the existing screw that holds the side panel on here. This is the one screw that we're going to reuse. In addition to this, we've got our 6 additional screws that came with the LED kit. We're going to start with the top, remove it, and really quickly just fasten it back in there. That tacks it in place, holds it in there, and I can feel this is notched in. And then I'm going to proceed down the strip, making sure that the LED strip isn't getting pinched and the barrel plug isn't getting pinched anywhere it shouldn't be either. There we go. I'll show you when I turn this around. There's a little void on the back side of this that the barrel plug and the LED strip come out of. I'm going to take the flange nut that was attached to the side strip before, and it's going to go inside the cutout on the back side of the panel, and I'm just going to hold it in place with my finger. I'll give you a close-up of that in a minute. I'm going to put the screw on the other side, and I'm just pressing in with my finger to make sure that that nut stays indexed inside of there, and the plate will basically hold it in place while I tighten. Don't over tighten it, just enough. There's nothing mechanical happening here. It's just to hold everything in line. And then the other two screws are going to go right through, and I'll show you again the back side of this in a minute, and they just screw into the recess on the other side. There's basically a trap for the other end of the screw. So we've got it nice and firm and lined up in place. I'm going to turn the box now, give you a quick look at that. And right here you can see where I was pointing before. This is where the flange nut recesses into the side panel, and right here is where the screw terminal sitting inside of there. These are the traps on the back side of the side strip, and you can see here there's the notch that this comes out. This is designed to be flat so that you can still wall mount it, and you'll see that the side strip actually ends here so that if you are wall mounting, it doesn't interfere with the cleat. So you still have clearance for the cleat to go in and lock it into place. Okay, we're going to continue on the back side. What I like to do is just tip it up, and you'll see that the box will actually rest on its front face. If you want to be extra secure, even, you can open the lid up a little bit and it kind of acts as its own prop. But the front edge should be sufficient as long as you're not moving it around too much. Gets us a good look at the back. And I'm going to remove the 3 existing screws that hold this panel, this back panel to the base panel. Because it's already put together, it's not going to go anywhere because it's indexed to the rest of the panels. After we remove these 3 screws, we're going to hold on to them because we're going to reuse them to just line up the back strip. Okay. And you'll see here this strip is actually laying right in line here with this back set, and that makes this back panel light up really well, acts as a nice light pipe through to the front. So that's why it's positioned where it is. And again, what we can do is we can just kind of slide a little bit of that LED strip out where we need it, just to get us lined up with our holes before we fasten anything. I'm just looking to see where my holes are and that I've got adequate, and I'll just leave it hanging here for just a second. I'm going to start with the center screw just because that seems to make things the easiest as we're lining everything up. I'm just going to tighten that. It's going to tighten right back into the existing thing. Really easy. Holds it nice and flat. This carbon fiber PETG by Printed Solid is fantastic for this application. It's nice and stiff. Also nice and temperature resistant. These LEDs don't get super hot, but it is better. Like PLA will start to deform after these lights being on all day. They'll start to warm up enough to the deformation point of PLA, but not to this PETG. I'm going to put in the screw for this side. Again, no need to over tighten. All we're doing is just holding it in place. This is not a strong or intense mechanical connection. And you might find there's a little bit of a oval hole here, little wiggling, just to get the screw in place and lined up. And there's going to be a gap on both sides. That's completely normal. That's just to give enough clearance for the LED strip to go in and out of this back strip. Okay, and it's okay, and if this accidentally pulls out, you can just put it right back in the track. No big deal. And we're just going to twist this around, and again, the idea is it's just going right in here. It's meeting the nice little recess here on the side. And we're going to push this up, and it's okay if it overhangs the top. Again, we're going to I'm going to tip this thing back down, not crunching the side, and I'm going to turn it around here just so we can see this side. Again, I'm going to take this top screw out, and we're going to start from the top down. Now you see, I mentioned that we have a little bit of excess strip. That's completely normal. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to tuck this back down and around behind itself. That does two things. One, it just keeps it from getting pinched here, and two, it kind of helps keep the top part pressure out, and you'll see we can just tuck it around right here so that it's even with the top of that notch that we created on the back side. Again, you have a little bit of excess. If you ever had to cut and reseat, you do have that option. You could certainly cut it here as well if you didn't want to tuck it back, but I leave it in place in case we need it if we had to rewire it or something later on. It's good to have. So again, we're taking this screw out the top, and we're sitting it right back in there. Really easy. Okay, and we're making sure everything's in place, and we're going to go down the line here. I'm going to do these two, and then I'll do the bottom one last so I can turn it around and you can see it. But again, these are just going right through the acrylic side panel holes and then into the nut trap on the back side on the other side of the side strip, printed side strip here. And again, you should just feel enough tension there. If you twist it, it's just going to strip out the back side. Again, no big deal. There's plenty of screws here to hold the whole thing in place, but don't overdo it. No need to. There we go. Just tighten it enough, you'll feel it. Just a little bit of resistance, that's all we need. And then we got our last little nut trap in this, and I'm going to flip this around and do it from the side here so you can get a shot of it. Again, I'm going to tip this up here so you can kind of better see. You'll see right here under the strip, I've got this little D profile that matches the shape of my flange nut. Just going to press that in the hole there, make sure my LED strip is clear, or just over top of it, not getting pinched underneath. And I'm going to lay this down. Oops, sorry about that. And just by hand, I'm going to run it through here. This is really overkill. This probably isn't necessary, but being an obsessed with symmetry kind of guy, I wanted to have 4 screws, not 3, holding the strip on, making it look firm. And again, I'm just holding it in so that it doesn't push out of the hole. It's not a super tight fit. Again, it's just to index the thing so that when I twist it, the threads cut through. And a little bit of threading will pop out on the backside, but again, this is concealed and not in the way of anything. You can see where our LED strips are. And that's it. And we're just gonna do one more test to make sure before we go mount the thing on the wall or anything that we didn't break any wires. And look at that. You can already see that it's lighting up beautifully. I'm going to turn it around so you can see. Here's a side shot. You can get a really good look at that edge lighting. We've really kind of mastered this etch pattern so that we get maximum refraction in here inside of our edge lit pattern. And on top of that, it just does an amazing job lighting up the edges of the box. Here's a look at it from the front. Just such a cool look. This is the red. Again, we've got it in a number of different colors, and there's a look at the side panels as well. That's all there is to it. Thanks for watching.